Welcome to What Would Sabrina Say? I'm Sabrina Dong, and I'm excited you're joining me today. In this podcast, I dive into mental health topics on relationships, and overall well-being. With over 20 years of experience as a licensed clinical social worker, I share insights and invite expert guests who are passionate about making a positive difference. I started this podcast because I was frustrated with the often misleading or recycled information in social media involving self-help and the mental health field. My goal is to provide you with genuine, useful content that's educational and informative. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you find our conversations both enlightening and empowering. I'm glad you're here. Hi, welcome to What Would Sabrina Say? I'm Sabrina Dong, host and licensed clinical social worker. I'm here today with Matt Young. He's a life and performance coach, keynote speaker, founder of Matt Young Life Coaching, and former professional footballer, plus marathon runner. So happy to have you on, Matt. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Sabrina. I appreciate it.
So if you wanted to explain a bit further about yourself, what you do as a life and performance coach before we jump into such a great topic today around helping athletes, coaches dealing with the pressure of the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose in the simplest way, what I do is I remove the mental and emotional blocks that people are facing. Now, whether that will be the anxiety, fear, worry, doubt, stress, overwhelm, pressure in general, the emotional blocks that get in the way of someone's personal and professional performance, that's what I help remove. Because, like I say, being in that environment myself, you touched on it a little bit at the start, I understand firsthand what it can feel like, what it is like to be in that environment. And so I'm very, very passionate about helping people free themselves from those burdens of those emotions that hold them back. And it's been something that I've done for many, many years now, and fortunate enough to have worked with big corporations and organizations, sports teams, athletes from around the world, and essentially helping them free themselves from that place so they can not only enhance but personal lives as well.
Right, because I think there is that combination, right? That not only can your tools help people within perhaps the profession, of being an athlete or part of a team or coaching a team, but also when you're moving away from that type of organization, professional and personal, like day to day, right? If you have other maybe operating a business or just experiencing blocks in different ways and you're wanting to focus more on your goals or challenge some of the thinking, right, or beliefs that might get in the way there. That's great.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think we all have different limiting beliefs, limiting traits, limiting emotions that can get in the way. A lot of the time we leave them unidentified, untouched, undealt with, and then they end up bringing some barriers or some challenges in our lives, generally at the exact wrong time. So my work is very much centered around helping people identify what they feel may be those friction points, and then, like I said before, helping remove them.
Can you explain about being an athlete, whether it was, on a football team to being a triathlete? What helps you to sort of get in that mode and to be able to focus despite what might be happening around you in your day to day?
Well, ever since I was a young boy, my dad used to use a term with me, tunnel vision. And he used to talk about this tunnel vision and about blocking out the external noise and focusing your mind on some tunnel vision. And I think sometimes there's a nature where that can be wonderful. Sometimes there's a nature where that can be actually a little bit counterintuitive, because we become so zoned in, we become so focused that we don't become free. And so for me, creating that environment is about, if I'm working with someone and or within myself, is about creating that place where I am 100% in the moment, but I'm free in that moment. When we start to become rigid, when we start to become fixed in our nature, that's where we start to become hyper aware of pressures and these types of things. If I'm completely in that moment and being tunnel vision, but with the awareness of where I am and what I'm doing, that's really what allows, in my language, peak performance to occur. And that's a really niche little spot that I look to try and create with people.
So when you talk about being less rigid and present, what does that look like?
What that means is when the spotlight's on you, when you're standing on stage, when you're in the arena, when you're on the court pitch, whatever it may be, in that moment, what we don't need is a hyperfixation of I'm in this moment. I'm very aware of that. My senses, my emotions, my being is very aware that I'm in this moment. What we need from that perspective at that stage is a freedom to who I am, a freedom that within me emotionally to express and be courageous, passionate, purposeful, whatever it is that we're looking to feel in that moment and feel exactly what we want to feel whilst being aware of being in that moment. I think a lot of the times when people find themselves in these hyper vigilant situations, they become very aware and they lose themselves. They become very aware of there's all these people watching me. I've got this moment here. What if this goes wrong? How about if, I mess up here? Oh my God, what about my team? When that happens, we lose our sense of freedom within ourselves. We become so fixated on everyone out there. So it's an awareness of what's going on out there, but then a centering within myself to say, right, what is it I'm looking to channel?
So as you're talking about hyperfixation, I'm thinking about anxiety, right? Or performance anxiety. And sometimes people might feel like if I'm not anxious, then I'm not going to perform well, or I don't care about it as much. Any thoughts around that?
It's something I hear a lot. It's something I got told a lot. It's something when I used to play and I was a professional athlete, I used to believe. Truthfully, doing what I do now, I'm not sure how much I believe that anymore. And the simple reason for that is for the reason that we're all humans. We're all human beings and we all feel different emotions in different moments. No one needs to tell a professional athlete, no one needed to tell me that this means a lot right now. And, this anxiety as an example here is just being made aware that it's a lot. I know it's a lot right now. I think sometimes we use that terminology as a reframe to try and help settle someone. We use that as a reframe to go, no, it means it means a lot to you. So that individual can then feel and try and gain a perspective to feel more at peace with what they're feeling in that moment. For me, perceptionally now, I don't think that necessarily we need that. What I believe that we need is an awareness, like I've said before, but also a direction of where we want to place our emotion instead. Because you know what? It can mean a lot to me and I can be incredibly passionate about it. It can mean a lot to me and I can be incredibly driven. It can mean a lot to me and I can be incredibly calm. Oftentimes, the anxiousness that occurs within people is because their fixation is starting to waver onto everything out there. And so then we have to try and reframe it in our head as if to go, okay, this just means it means a lot to me, to try and then settle that. So we're dealing with the byproduct instead of the source of it.
So something can mean a lot to you, but it doesn't mean you have to be feeling that pressure or anxiety about it.
You know, we can all feel certain levels of demand, which is ultimately what pressure is in any situation of life. Any situation of life. Parenting, finances, health, performance, whatever. Does it mean that I need anxiety for that to make it aware that that's how I'm feeling and this means a lot to me? No. But oftentimes we produce this trait of anxiety, and then to counteract that, like I just said, we'll then go, okay, this is just a sign it means a lot to me. Doesn't always need to be the case from my understanding from my work in this area.
Right. And I think too, because, so many times, whether it's, engaged in a sport or having a business goal, it's very focused on the outcome and outcome driven, right? It's getting that goal, it's succeeding and what that looks like for you. It's winning, it's getting that, client, let's say from a, entrepreneur perspective. So by the sounds of it, it's challenging that belief around focusing so much on maybe an outcome.
Right. Well, again, I love the fact we're getting into this. Anyone is striving for an outcome, ultimately to be able to uncover and feel something within themselves. Whether it's an Olympian who's going for a gold medal. I've never spoke to anyone or an athlete who's going for a particular trophy. No one wants it for that ribbon that is around their neck. It's about what that ribbon and that gold medal represents. It represents the work, it represents the passion, the effort, the time, the energy, the emotion, the years of graft that have been put into those moments. And oftentimes, when we become so fixated on an outcome, that gold medal, we then place all of our emotion into saying, this is what must happen. And if that happens, I'm going to tighten up, I'm going to fix up, I'm not going to be free in those moments. What a big part of my work is about understanding where I'm heading, of course, but releasing that outcome and then focusing on what can I do to, like I said, feel passionate, purposeful, driven, content, calm in this moment right now. Because if I do that and I do that to the level, all of that hard work, energy, effort, emotion, time that I've put in over the years, that will bear fruits and that will be the outcome. That gold medal can be the outcome of that. When we become so fixated on the actual outcome itself, sometimes that can allow us to tighten up. That's the external pressures of, if I don't win that gold medal, if I don't get this is what this means about me. So it's a reversal of that, to a sense that it gives the athlete back the control, gives them back the power of who they are.
Is it sort of separating your identity from?
To a certain extent, yes. When we generally detach our identity to external things, they come to us. When our whole identity isn't based around how many noughts are in my bank account, or whether I'm married or have kids or own a home or have a gold medal or not, generally we attract more of that in our lives. Why? Because there's not an energy of I need, in which case we tighten up, we fix up. When there's more of an air of, you know what, this is how I'm going to feel, and I'm going to deliver, and I'm going to perform at this level, and I'm going to act in a certain way, the partner, the house, the noughts in the bank account, the gold medal, they generally come in tow. So it's absolutely a case of that. And identity is something that I believe in, is something that I focus heavily on, is created internally, not in the exterior makeup of things. If that's the case, we will run in a very fine line where pressure is going to play a big role in it.
Right. So whether it's, let's say, on the field or off, right, you might experience it in all areas or ways if you're attaching yourself to external things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was just wondering, Matt, how coaching can help with that. So what would be some of the goals? Maybe you can walk me through like what a client would look like and how you could provide that support.
Yeah. I mean, let me give you an example. Obviously, I'll keep them confidential, but I was working with a professional footballer here in England, and they were dealing with some situations where essentially when they stepped onto the field, that spotlight that I spoke about, that felt like it was so overwhelming for them that they could just not play the game. They could not be free. They could not do their profession. They could not do what they've trained for years to do, because their focus was on everything but what they can control. So they come to see me, and my process is very simple. Is first of all understanding their model of situation. Because this particular athlete who come to see me, he was at a time in his life where he had so many things going on in his personal life externally. And when he stepped onto that playing field, then it was, oh God, now this is another thing where I have to make sure I get it right, because if it doesn't, it could end up like 1,001 other things. So I understand their model of the world. Once I understand their model of the world, I then will look at, okay, what do we need to do to put you back in, quote unquote, the driving seat of your life? Not the passenger seat who's reactive, who's respond to these things. Forget your performance right now on the playing field. What do we need to do to put you back into the driving seat of your life? What is it that you need to feel more of? What is it that you want to and need to experience more of? I just want to feel calmer. I just want to have a moment where I can actually breathe. I just want to have a moment where I can feel like my head isn't about to explode with all these thousand things. Great. Well, that's what I will focus on. I believe, and we have a very simple philosophy in what we do here, emotional solutions to athlete performance. You give the emotional solutions off the field of play, people will create their performance on it. Generally, high performance athletes, they don't need more coaching of what to do on the pitch or on the field or on the track. They know that. That's why they are where they are. So I'd help them create emotional solutions off of it. How to create calmness in their life, how to create that peace, how to create that sense of purpose, passion, whatever it may be. And then, great. How can, and this comes back to what we just said, how can I show you to take that identity now that you've cultivated and created for yourself to deal with those solutions away from the game? How can we take that identity onto the field of play? Because when we do that, like I said, I'm not here to coach anyone on what they need to do on the track or on the field or on the stage. They know exactly what to do. I'm here to show you the emotional solutions that will create that athlete performance of what they need to do. So it's generally that 3-step process there.
So it's not giving them more of what they already know or know how to do already. It's like you said, from coaching or from their team. What does emotional solutions look like when you talk about that? Just is there an example of what that is?
Well, an emotional solution would be if someone is dealing with anxiety, stress, overwhelm, fear, what they have is a block, is a barrier, is something that is ultimately an invisible wall that is preventing them from feeling a certain way, doing a certain thing. So what I need to help create is, after I've got an understanding of their model of things, what an emotional solution to that would be. So an emotional solution to anxiety is breaking that pattern and creating a space of confidence or calm or peace or love or understand, whatever it is that someone wants to feel is the antidote to that. If it's stress and overwhelm, maybe it's I want to create moments of clarity and moments of understanding, moments of peace again, whatever it may be. And so emotional solutions look at recognizing where we're getting stuck, understanding what we need to do to interrupt that and stop that particular pattern from repeating itself, and then creating the solution of what's the antidote to that particular feeling. For some people, to feel better, loose term, but to feel more empowered from anxiety, they want to feel like, you know what, I can take on the world. Others just want to feel a space of calm. And then we go about cultivating those types of emotions, ingraining them within someone emotionally. That's the emotional solution. Now, great. Now let's move to step 3. Let's take that identity of what we've created into these areas of your life.
So you're really going back to what you said about mapping out, right? So you're getting a map or idea perhaps of how a person is coping or dealing with pressures and stressors, and you're giving those solutions where they may need to be within all different areas of life, right? Kind of widening that lens, a bigger picture of things, and helping with that map. Already maybe tapping into tools that people have already, but may not be applying it in those areas where they're feeling pressure.
Yes, absolutely. And I think sometimes the biggest problem with both, let's say, athlete and coach is that they feel like they need more of something. I need another strategy. I need another bit of this. I need to tell you what to do. And it's all more, 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 more. Often what gets people stuck is the fact that they don't need more, they need less. They need less of the information and strategies, and they need less of all of that so they can just feel freer in where they are. And so, like I say, if we're always telling people what you should do, this is how you should behave, this is how you should act, this is what the way you should be. Okay, I need to think of this, I need to think. No. Step 1, like I said, in this 3-step process is uncovering the athlete's model of the world, the athlete's model of what's going on. Because then we can strip back the things that are not needed. Less of that, great. That creates room for them to feel more of what they want.
When we think about performance, and a lot is focused on statistics, stats, now you got things like algorithms, right? And things about business. Like, how could someone learn to reframe or find peace when that is legitimately a focus, right? Or kind of part of their world, right? Like you said, when being a footballer and you have to focus on stats or how you're doing or performance, right? How hard is that to move away from when you have anxiety around that?
Well, it's very hard when your control, your identity is based upon this is who I am. That's very hard. This is, if I'm being honest, 95% of people, let alone athletes out there. They are defined by the stats. They are defined who they believe they are by the stats, by the bank account, by the size of the house and how many bedrooms it's got, by the performance worksheet that
By
they
the
get.
bonus.
and by the bonus, all these different things. And when that's the case, all of those emotions of stress, anxiety, fear, worry, doubt, you're not in control of them. You are just the recipient of the volatility of whatever it is that's going to come your way. If it's a small bonus, fear, worry, anger, stress, frustration. If it's a big bonus, thank God for that, I can feel more of what I want. But we're never truly in control. And so I'm not saying that you negate those things. Those things are lovely. The bonus, the house, the whatever it may be, they're lovely, wonderful. They're additions. They're not core elements. When core elements are built internally, they are built based upon me and how I cultivate certain emotions through work, output, through emotional and mental understanding, through breaking down certain barriers, through potentially looking at myself and seeing where are my blind spots and doing those types of things. And I draw my emotion from those areas of life. I draw my confidence from the foundations that I've put in place. Do you know what? You can or you may not acknowledge me, but I acknowledge myself. If you want to acknowledge me, it's an addition. If you don't, I still acknowledge who I am. And then that comes when that really translates to my performance. You know what? I'm going to be much freer. And the likelihood is, like I said before, that bonus is going to come my way. The energy that radiates when we're in a different place there.
Right. I was just thinking of perhaps, whether you're a manager of a team and needing to focus on getting them to a certain outcome, or you're a coach and you're needing your, team to be a top tier, just the pressures around getting to a certain outcome, and if that means your job or not sometimes too, right?
Absolutely. But exactly like what you said there, if it's the manager or the leader or a team, what they then do is they then put that external, my job's on the line here, I need my team to perform. They then transmit that to the players, to their team, to who's working, their employees, whoever that may be. And then that team then have to wear that burden of pressure. They then restrict because now boss or team leader or manager has said this, so they've got more an external pressure because I'm reacting to the external pressure. I then put that onto them. They restrict. We don't get the result that we want. Everything comes crumbling down. It's a
The
common
ripple
pattern
effect.
I see time and time and time again. Any great leader, any great manager, any great team understands that to invoke a result, I need to tap into, in this case, the team's psyche, the individual's psyche of what they want. What do they want to feel? Where do they want to go? Because if they perform freely, me as the manager or the team leader, I'm going to get the rewards as that as a byproduct of my focus being into them individually, not putting more of an external pressure on them saying that this is where we need to be. Because people will cap out at what they can do under external pressure. They might be able to withstand it for a week, maybe a month, maybe a year, but eventually it's going to top out. That's where if you can tap into them individually, find out what they want to feel, find what they want to experience, find what is it that drives them. There's a limitless pool then that's going to produce result after result after result after result.
So not taking on that burden for the entire team and feeling that heaviness, but actually seeing how you can, I guess, maybe use that energy differently, or have the team be motivated, be excited, versus feeling that pressure from you and that stress.
Right. And it's only, absolutely, and it's only a burden. It's only a burden if we don't have a clear plan of action as to how we're going to create new results. That's ultimately what a burden is for someone. A burden is I'm carrying this around and there's nothing I can do about it, and or I'm stuck this way. The moment I put new solutions, new options, new insights in place, it's no longer a burden. Why? Because I've got a way out of it. But for so many teams, the manager, the leader, whoever it may be, the coach, they will wear the burden and that transmits. Why? Because they try and use the same formula that's got them stuck to try and get them out. That needs to be completely changed.
That's true. That formula is not working, but then how do you find another formula, right? And that's where your supports can really help too, to see that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That comes where tapping into the model of the team, the individual, which is going to be a new solution for someone, pays back dividends for the simple reason now that you're creating a new strategy, you're creating new options, you're creating a burden-less environment.
I was wondering too if we could talk about for athletes who are looking to retire or maybe shifting in their profession, right? And coping with how we word it or phrase it around like in therapy is that loss, right? Of that role, of that identity, of the team. I'm just wondering with your own experience and journey and working with your clients, how that can look differently and cause less pain or suffering with that transition.
Absolutely. It's something that is incredibly common. Any high-performing athlete, person, whatever it may be, would find themselves, and it doesn't even come to that area. It's the same when, a child leaves home and goes off to university. It's the same type of thing. You're ultimately transitioning from one form of life into a different area. And so if we are focusing on the athlete there, I struggled myself with this initially, that all I knew who I was Matt Young, the footballer. That's who I knew. Hardworking, dedicated, great attitude, never say no, never back down. That's what he did. But that person of who I was, who I knew, was Matt Young, the footballer, not Matt Young, the person. When the football then stops, there's a part of me then that goes, who am I now? What am I? I use the term I was a shell of a man. There was a man there, but he had no substance inside. There was no foundation to who he was. It comes back to that word you used earlier, that identity. If my identity is in being a mum or a dad, a footballer, a boss, a leader, whatever it may be, and that title gets taken from me, or my kid moves out of home, all of a sudden then, who am I now? What's left behind? What's there for me? That becomes an issue. So a big part of, like what I said to you before, emotional solutions to athlete performance is about creating the identity of who the person is, who the individual is. Because then you realize, then we can all realize that your profession, your role within the family, your career, your hobbies, they're vehicles of life that you use to exercise your identity. They are not who you are. It's a sort of a different nuance there for people, because then you know what, the football career might end, but as you said, the ultramarathon journey opens up. When the ultramarathon journey ends, I'm now training to swim the English Channel from England to France. It's not that I'm an expert in football, running and swimming. I'm far from. But I've understood that I can take me everywhere. I can take the traits of what make Matt Young the person everywhere. Matt Young the swimmer, well, he's going to be capped out pretty soon, because once he does that swim, what's next for him? Like, I swim from England to America? What am I going to do? So that's where oftentimes that transition needs to be a shift, not in what's next for me out there, but what's next for me internally.
Wow, that's amazing. So just give an example of that process for you and where it's taking you, right? And doing triathlons to now swimming. So it's finding other ways to and you push yourself, but in a good way, or achieve other goals and not see connect to or maybe resist that change, right? Of you're accepting that chapter might be closed, but excited about other opportunities.
Absolutely. I mean, we see it time and time and time again. We see the athlete who, their career is dated, their career's past them at this stage, but they make the comeback and say, even though all has been lost, not all has been lost, but even though that chapter of their life has come to an end, they have to go back for one more. Why? It's because their identity is still stuck in feeling a certain type of way has to mean that I have to be in that environment. It's quite a limited way for us to live, because it limits our experience of life. I believe in creating that place within the individual, and then that individual can take themselves into any profession, any undertaking that they want, and create the same results for themselves.
Right. So I'm wondering, Matt, with your expertise, is it helping people with maybe the challenge of letting go or maybe some of that resistance?
Right, and letting go can often be quite scary for people, so I don't generally use that terminology as such, but essentially it's we will let go externally when we feel safe internally. And that's always a huge part of my work is ensuring that the athlete or the person, whoever I'm working with, feels emotionally safe and secure and in control within themselves, because then they'll relinquish their hold on whatever it is out there. They'll never let go of the gold medal or the career or whatever it may be if they don't feel like they're at peace within themselves. And so that's always a big part of it. And that term of letting go, yes, but not without the safety within themselves, first and foremost, that I'm going to be okay, that there is life after this particular career, whatever it may be for them. That's when they will let go.
So challenging some of those fears, right? Of fears of the unknown or fears of being a certain way or a certain routine, right? Part of that day to day. That can be scary. We like to know what's going to happen next.
Area we're creatures of habit, aren't we? We're all the same in that sense. We all want to get up at the same time, take the same road to work, have the same lunch, come home, have the same reaction from our partner every time. You know, we want these types of things. So oftentimes when we're trying to create a different space within ourselves emotionally, this is why people don't want to let go. Even if that emotion's destructive. Many times I'll work with someone and there'll be anxiety or fear or worry or doubt or dread, but they won't want to let it go because it's what they know. And we would rather, forgive the sort of quite rogue analogy, but we'd rather be in bed with the devil than be in bed alone. And so when we can understand that, no, there's a better person to keep me occupied with in bed that feels safer, that feels secure, then I'll let go of the devil, quote unquote, the emotion that we don't want. So it's always that way around.
I was wondering, Matt, if people would like to reach you to learn more or receive your coaching and support, where to reach you, and like you mentioned, you don't just work with athletes, but maybe you can share other ways that you can help people as well too. Talking about
Of
where people
course, I
can
mean,
find you.
naturally, I work with people from all sorts of background. I've been fortunate enough to work with multinational companies and sports teams, as I said, athletes, but also everyday people like us and the single parent, the university student, and everyone in between. Because ultimately, emotional patterns are universal for us all, and so that's what I'm ultimately passionate about: freeing people from the emotional and mental blocks that are holding them back. And so naturally, we're quite active on social medias and things like that. So if people want to find us on there, it's Matt Young LC, MattYoungLC, the letter L, the letter C, or likewise through our website, www.mattyounglc.com. They can find more of our work there. We have many different resources and training resources and things like this that can help people on that particular avenue. So yeah, there's many options that could that people can occupy themselves with to give themselves some insight.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Matt, and sharing your expertise. There's lots of people out there who are transitioning in different parts of their lives. I know they'll find the resources on your site helpful and as well as this content. And I'd love to have you back on to learn more about those resources as well. Thank you
No
so
worries.
much. Appreciate you.
I appreciate your time and thank you for having me on.